My brother accidentally threw my $3,800 laptop into the pool because I refused to cover his Vegas weekend. Should have been waterproof, he laughed. Dad said, don't be dramatic. He was angry. I put the dripping laptop on the table and said, keep laughing. At 8 a.m., his phone rang once, and the name on the screen made Dad stop breathing. The laptop hit the water at an angle, not flat, corner first, like a skip stone that forgot to skip. The screen was still open. The charging light was still green. It went into the deep end of my parents' pool at 4:47 on a Saturday afternoon in front of 6 people, and it sank the way electronics sink, which is fast and without ceremony, trailing a small ribbon of bubbles that broke on the surface and then were gone. The water closed over it. The pool light underneath made the Apple logo glow for about 3 seconds before the screen went black. Then it was just a shape at the bottom of the pool, a $3,800 shape. My brother Dustin was standing 4 feet from the edge with his hands still out in front of him. He was smiling the way he smiles after he breaks something, which is the same way he smiled when he was 11 and threw my science project off the porch, and the same way he smiled when he was 19 and backed his truck into my car in the driveway and told our father the mailbox did it. It is a smile that knows it will be forgiven before it finishes forming. 2 neighbors were standing at the grill with tongs and open beers. They had both gone still. My mother Loretta was on the patio in a lawn chair with a glass of white wine that had been full 2 minutes ago and was now somehow half empty. My brother's girlfriend Cass was on a pool float with her phone up, and she had been recording something on her phone, and she put it down very quickly when the laptop went in, the way a person puts down evidence they do not want to be holding. Dustin looked at the pool. He looked at me. He laughed once, short, high, and said, should have been waterproof. My father came out of the sliding glass door with a plate of burger patties. He saw my face. He saw Dustin's face. He saw the bubbles settling on the surface of the pool. He set the plate down on the patio table and put his hands on the back of a chair. What happened? Dustin's smile did not move. She would not cover Vegas, so I helped her take a swim. My father looked at me, not at Dustin, at me. He looked at me the way he has looked at me for 32 years, which is the way a man looks at a piece of furniture he did not pick out, but has gotten used to having in the room. Don't be dramatic, Harper. He was angry. You know how he gets. We will figure out the laptop later. I did not say anything. My father put the plate down. He wiped his hands on his jeans. He looked at me with the look he has been perfecting since I was 9 years old. The look that says the problem in this family is not the person who broke the thing, but the person who is upset that the thing is broken. You sit in a room with a calculator and a cat, and you think that makes you somebody. Your brother built houses with his hands. You count other people's money. That is not a career, Harper. That is a hobby for women who could not get married. Your grandmother kept books too. She died in a 1-bedroom with a shoebox full of receipts and a cat that ate her leftovers. That is your future. Do not make a scene over a laptop you can replace with 1 month of whatever it is you charge those little businesses of yours. One of the neighbors at the grill set his beer down on the side table. He did not pick it up again. The other neighbor was looking at the pool. My mother finished her wine. She held the empty glass with both hands like a thing she was keeping safe. Cass was still on the float. She had put her phone face down on her stomach. Dustin was smiling. He had heard every word, and the words had confirmed what every word from my father has confirmed since Dustin was born, which is that Dustin is the son and I am the bookkeeper, and the bookkeeper does not get to be upset when the son breaks her things. I walked to the edge of the pool. I took off my shoes. I stepped down into the shallow end. The water came to my waist. I walked across the bottom to the deep end, and I reached down and I picked up the laptop with both hands. Water poured out of the keyboard and the charging port and the headphone jack. The screen was dead. The hinge was loose. I walked back to the shallow end and up the steps. Water ran off my clothes and onto the concrete. I carried the laptop to the patio table where my father's burger patties were sitting on a plate. I set the laptop down next to the plate. Water pooled on the glass tabletop and ran to the edge and dripped onto the concrete. I looked at Dustin. I looked at my father. I looked at my mother, who had finished her wine, and was holding the empty glass with both hands like a thing she was keeping safe. Keep laughing. That was all I said. I picked up my shoes from the pool edge. I walked around the side of the house to the driveway. I got in my car. My clothes were soaked. The seat was leather. The water would stain it. I did not care. I put the car in reverse, and I pulled out of the driveway on Maplewood Lane at 4:53 in the afternoon, and I did not look in the rearview mirror because I did not need to see their faces to know what they looked like. I had been looking at those faces for 32 years, and every one of those faces had made the same decision every time, which was that whatever Dustin did was weather, and whatever I felt about it was an overreaction to the forecast. I almost pulled over at the first red light. I almost called Myrna. I did not. I kept driving because Myrna had already told me what to do 3 weeks ago over a slice of lemon pie at the diner on 4th Street, and I had already done it. The thing I had done was the reason I had said, keep laughing. The thing I had done was sitting in an encrypted cloud backup on a server in Virginia that did not care about swimming pools. I need to tell you 3 things about who I am, and then we can get back to the water on the patio table. I am an enrolled agent. That is a federally licensed tax practitioner authorized to represent taxpayers before the Internal Revenue Service. I passed the exam on my first attempt at age 24. I work from a 1-bedroom apartment on Birch Court with a cat named Kettle who sits on my desk while I reconcile QuickBooks files and does not judge me for the hours I keep. I have 14 regular clients. I charge $75 an hour. I do not have a firm. I do not have a receptionist. I have a cast iron skillet that my grandmother Opal gave me when I was 9 years old, and I have a cloud backup with 256-bit encryption, and I have a very good memory for numbers that do not add up. My grandmother Opal ran a small catering kitchen for 30 years. She cooked for church events, wedding receptions, company picnics, school fundraisers. She did her own taxes by hand until she was 74. She kept her receipts in a shoebox and her ledger in a spiral notebook, and she never missed a deduction, and she never filed late. She taught me to cook eggs in the cast iron skillet when I was 9. She taught me to balance a checkbook when I was 11. She taught me that math does not have opinions. My father called her a woman who died in a 1-bedroom with a shoebox full of receipts. He said that at her funeral. He said it to my uncle while I was standing 3 feet away, holding a plate of food I could not eat. Opal died 6 years ago. The skillet is on my stovetop. I cook eggs in it every morning. The handle has a small crack where Opal dropped it once in 1987 and she fixed it with a bolt she drilled herself. That is the kind of woman Opal was. She fixed things with what she had. 3 years ago, my father asked me to do the taxes for his company, Sinclair Built Construction. He said the bookkeeper had quit. He said the books were a mess. He said he could not afford a real accountant. That is the phrase he used, a real accountant. I am a real accountant. I have a federal license. But I am his daughter, so my work is free and my license is a hobby. I did the taxes for 3 years. Quarterly reconciliations, payroll tax deposits, W-2s, 1099s, annual filings, 3 years of work at $75 an hour that I never billed because he is my father and Opal would have told me to help family even when family does not deserve it. 6 weeks before the pool party, I was doing the Q3 reconciliation. Payroll looked wrong. One employee was pulling $78,000 a year as a site supervisor. The name on the W-2 was Dustin Sinclair, my brother. I pulled the job site records. Dustin's name was not on a single sign-in sheet, a single inspection report, a single safety meeting log. He had never been on a job site. He had been collecting $78,000 a year for 4 years, $312,000 in wages for work he never did, reported on W-2s my father had signed, filed with the IRS as legitimate payroll deductions. Ghost payroll. If this is the story you came for, hit subscribe to Family Secret Tales and stay with me. Because the laptop in the pool is not the story. The laptop was the excuse. The story is what was on it. I did not confront my father. I did not confront Dustin. I did what Myrna Trask taught me to do, which is secure the evidence first and feel the feelings later. Myrna Trask is 64 years old. She ran the tax firm where I interned after community college. She has been an EA for 41 years. When I passed my exam, Myrna took me to the diner on 4th Street and ordered 2 slices of lemon pie, one for her and one for me, and she said, "The IRS will never love you back, but the math will never lie to you either." She wrote my first professional reference. She still sends me 1 new client a month without being asked. She does not call it a referral. She calls it keeping the pipeline honest. 3 weeks before the pool party, I sat across from Myrna at the same diner with a folder of printouts. She looked at the W-2s. She looked at the payroll register. She looked at the site log gaps. She ate her pie. She set her fork down. She said, "Harper, file the tip." I filed the tip with IRS Criminal Investigation on a Tuesday, 12 days before the laptop went into the pool. I filed it the way you file a CI tip, which is carefully with documentation, with a cover letter, with a flash drive containing 4 years of QuickBooks files, W-2 archives, 1099 records, and bank reconciliation statements. All of it backed up to my encrypted cloud before I mailed the package. The cloud is not in a swimming pool. The cloud is in a data center in Virginia, and it does not care about my brother's feelings. 5 days before the pool party, an IRS CI special agent named JOAN HADLEY began calling the main line at Sinclair Built Construction. She called Monday. She called Tuesday. She called Wednesday. My father did not answer. My father told his foreman to say he was on a job site. My father did not know that JOAN HADLEY had already been to 2 of his job sites and spoken to 2 of his subcontractors, and looked at payroll records that listed an employee named Dustin Sinclair, who none of the subs had ever seen on a roof or behind a saw or anywhere near a foundation pour. 3 days before the pool party, Dustin called me. He wanted me to cover his Vegas trip, $4,200, flights, hotel, table minimums. I said no. He did not take no the way a normal person takes no. He took it the way Dustin takes every no, which is as a personal attack from a person who does not understand how much harder his life is than theirs. You have money sitting in a savings account doing nothing. I need $4,000 for 3 days. You are not even using it. You are hoarding it like Grandma Opal hoarded receipts in that shoebox. You are going to die alone in a room full of spreadsheets and a cat that does not know your name. Give me the money, Harper. It is the least you can do, considering I am the reason Dad's company is still running. I said, "You have never been on a job site, Dustin." He hung up. I did not know about the gambling debt yet. I would find that out later in JOAN HADLEY's preliminary report, which listed $31,000 in payments to a shell company called Ace Equipment Rentals. Ace Equipment Rentals did not have a website. It did not have a warehouse. It did not own a single piece of equipment. It had a P.O. box in Henderson, Nevada, and a bank account that matched a payment plan Dustin had set up with a casino credit department at the Bellagio. My father had been covering Dustin's gambling losses through Sinclair Built's accounts payable for 19 months. $31,000 disguised as equipment rentals. Equipment that did not exist, rented by a company that did not exist, paid for by a construction firm that was about to stop existing. 2 days before the pool party, my mother called me. She did not ask about Vegas. She said, "Harper, I want you to know that your father appreciates you going through the old books. He knows it is a lot of work." Her voice had a small wobble in it that I recognized from every time she had lied to me since I was a child. She was not calling to thank me. She was calling to find out what I had found. I told her I was almost done with Q3. I told her everything looked fine. She said, "Good." She hung up. That night, Loretta told Dustin that I had been going through the books. The next morning, Dustin texted me, "Pool party Saturday. You should come. Bring the laptop. I want to show Dad something on it." I almost did not go. I stood in my kitchen with the phone in my hand and the skillet on the burner and 2 eggs on the counter, and I almost texted back, "I'm busy," but I went. I went because I knew what Dustin was going to do, and I wanted him to do it on camera. Cass's phone had been recording when the laptop went in. She had put it down fast, but not fast enough. Cass's phone was an iPhone with iCloud backup enabled, and I knew that because Cass had asked me to help her set it up at Thanksgiving. The video was already in her cloud. She did not know that yet. Here is what I did Saturday night while my parents' patio table dried in the dark with a dead laptop still sitting on it, next to a plate of raw burger patties that nobody had cooked. I sat at my kitchen table at 10:14 p.m. Kettle was on the desk. The cast iron skillet was on the stovetop from that morning's eggs. I opened my backup laptop, a refurbished ThinkPad I keep in a drawer for exactly this kind of situation, because Opal taught me that you always have a second set of books, and you always have a second way to cook, and you always have a second plan for when the first one catches fire. I logged into my encrypted cloud. Everything was there. Every QuickBooks file, every W-2, every 1099, every bank reconciliation. 4 years of Sinclair Bilt's financial life, intact, time-stamped, untouchable. The pool had killed a laptop. It had not killed the evidence. I drafted an addendum to JOAN HADLEY. I described the laptop destruction. I described the timeline. Loretta's phone call 2 days prior, Dustin's text the next morning requesting I bring the laptop, the physical act of throwing it into the pool in front of 6 witnesses. I described the sequence as what it was, which is coordinated destruction of financial evidence by a family that knew an investigation was coming. I attached the cloud backup's verification log showing the last sync was 3:41 p.m., Saturday, 66 minutes before the laptop went in. I sent it at 11:08 p.m. from the same secure email I had used for the original tip. Then I pulled one more file. This one I had found 4 weeks ago in a folder labeled Admin Old on the Sinclair Bilt shared drive. It was a separation agreement between Boyd Sinclair and Floyd Mitchum, dated 5 years ago. Floyd was my father's bookkeeper before me. My father had told me Floyd quit because he got a better offer in Columbus. The separation agreement told a different story. Floyd had found the ghost payroll. Floyd had confronted my father. My father had paid Floyd $15,000 to sign a non-disclosure agreement and leave without making a report. The agreement had a notary stamp from my father's own attorney. Floyd did not quit. Floyd was silenced. My father had done this before. I attached the Floyd Mitchum agreement to the addendum. Then I drafted a separate complaint to the Ohio Construction Industry Licensing Board. Ghost employees on insured job sites meant workers' compensation fraud. It meant jobs staffed with unlicensed labor listed as supervised by a site supervisor who did not exist. It meant every inspection report my father had filed for 4 years listed a supervisor who had never supervised. The licensing board complaint went out at 11:47 p.m. Then I drafted one more document, a formal demand for 3 years of unpaid tax preparation services at my standard hourly rate, $14,400. 3 years of quarterly reconciliations, annual filings, payroll tax deposits, W-2 preparation, and state compliance. Work my father had called a hobby. Work he had never paid me for because I was family, and family works for free, and free is what you call a woman you do not respect. I sent the demand letter to my father's business address, certified mail, scheduled for Monday delivery. Then I closed the laptop. I looked at the skillet. I looked at Kettle. Kettle was asleep on the desk with one paw over the edge. I went to bed. I slept 7 hours. I did not dream. If you have made it this far, stay. Family Secret Tales is where the cloud does not forget. At 7:38 on Sunday morning, I drove back to my parents' house on Maplewood Lane. The laptop was still on the patio table. Nobody had moved it. The burger patties were still on the plate next to it. They had been sitting in 90-degree heat for 15 hours. Flies had found them. The pool filter was still cycling. The chairs were still arranged from the party. A beer can had fallen off the arm of a lawn chair and was lying on its side on the concrete with a small brown ring where the last sip had leaked out. I walked in through the sliding glass door. The kitchen. My father was at the table with a cup of coffee and the Sunday paper folded to the crossword he never finishes. My mother was at the counter in her bathrobe, cracking eggs into a pan that was not Opal's skillet and was not seasoned correctly. And that is the kind of thing I noticed because Opal taught me to notice. Dustin was at the table across from my father, unshowered, in the same clothes from yesterday, eating cereal from the box with his hand. Cass was on the couch in the living room with a blanket and her phone, which I could see from the kitchen doorway, and the screen was dark. My mother turned when she heard the sliding door. Her face did the thing it does when she is expecting an apology and is preparing to accept it graciously. She had put on lipstick. She had made scrambled eggs. She was ready for the scene she had written in her head, which was the scene where Harper comes back and says she overreacted and everyone eats breakfast and the laptop is forgotten and the family reseals itself like a wound that has been stitched too many times. Harper, sit down. I made eggs. I did not sit down. I stood in the kitchen doorway with my car keys still in my hand. Dustin looked up from his cereal. His mouth was full. He did not stop chewing. My father set his crossword pen down. He looked at me. He said, "You came to your senses." I came to finish what I started. He did not understand. He looked at my mother. My mother looked at me. My mother's face was already adjusting. She can feel a room shifting the way some people feel weather. Her hand tightened on the spatula. Dustin's phone was on the table. It rang once. One single ring, not a text buzz, a call. The screen lit up for 3 seconds. The name on the screen was in capital letters, the way names appear when they come from a government contact list. JOAN HADLEY, IRS. Dustin looked at the phone. He did not pick it up. He had never heard the name, but he had heard the 3 letters after it. His hand, the one with the cereal, stopped moving. A piece of cereal fell off his thumb and landed on the table. He looked at my father. My father was not looking at Dustin's phone. He was looking at me. He had already seen the name. He had been dodging that name for 5 days. He had told his foreman to lie about his location. He had not told anyone in this family that the IRS had been calling. And now the name he had been dodging was on his son's phone, on a Sunday morning, in his kitchen, in front of his wife and his daughter and the scrambled eggs. His coffee cup was halfway between the table and his mouth. It stopped there. It did not come back down. It did not go up. It stayed in the air the way objects stay in the air when the hand holding them has forgotten what hands are for. I said, "I filed the tip 2 Tuesdays ago. The cloud backup has every W-2 you ever signed for a man who never held a hammer." 23 words. The room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silent that has weight. The eggs on the stove were still cooking. The pan was making a small, sizzling sound. Nobody turned off the burner. My mother's spatula was raised 6 inches above the pan, and she was holding it the way a person holds something they're about to drop. My mother put the spatula down. She turned all the way around. She looked at me. Her lipstick was perfect. Her bathrobe was tied neatly. She had prepared this kitchen for an apology breakfast, and she had gotten something else entirely. And the something else was standing in her doorway with car keys and a face that was not apologizing. "Harper, you did not. Tell me you did not." I did not answer her. "I raised you. I fed you. I drove you to your little tax classes. I sat in that waiting room for 3 hours while you took that exam. And this is what you do to your father. This is what you do to your brother. Over numbers, over a laptop, over your pride. You are going to destroy this family because you cannot handle being the one who does not get thanked. That is what this is. You wanted to be thanked. And when nobody thanked you, you called the government. What kind of daughter does that? What kind of woman does that?" Her voice had gone up half an octave. The eggs were burning. The pan was smoking. Nobody turned off the burner. The smoke detector in the hallway beeped once. A small warning beep, not the full alarm, and nobody looked at it. Dustin pushed back from the table. It did not come down gently. It landed on the table hard enough to spill. Brown liquid spread toward the crossword puzzle. He did not wipe it. Dustin pushed back from the table. His chair made a screech on the tile. He stood up. He sat back down. He stood up again. My father's coffee cup came down. It did not come down gently. It landed on the table hard enough to spill. Brown liquid spread toward the crossword puzzle. He did not wipe it. Dustin reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a white envelope. Not a nice envelope, a gas station envelope. He held it out toward me. "Here, $3,800. The laptop. Exact amount. We are even. Call it off." He was holding the envelope with both hands. His fingers were shaking. "Not a lot." "Enough." I looked at the envelope. I almost took it. Not because I wanted the money. Because for 1/2 second I remembered being 6 years old and Dustin being 3 and handing me a graham cracker through the bars of his crib because I was crying about something I cannot remember. And that was the last time Dustin gave me something without it costing me more than it was worth. I did not take the envelope. I did not say a word. I picked up my coffee mug from the counter where I had set it when I walked in. I put it in the sink. I turned. I walked to the front door. I opened it. I stepped outside. I closed it behind me. I did not slam it. I closed it the way Opal closed doors, which was all the way, without looking back, because she said once that a door you have to look back through is a door you have not really closed. My mother's voice came through the door, muffled, high. She was talking to my father. I could not hear the words. I did not need to. The eggs were still on the burner. Nobody had turned it off. The pan was still sizzling. I got in my car. I pulled out of the driveway. It was 8:09 in the morning. The 7 things that happened over the next 3 weeks are not guesses. They are things that happen. Monday morning at 9. JOAN HADLEY and 2 field agents walked into Sinclair Built Construction's office on Industrial Parkway. My father was not there. He had not come to the office since Friday. His foreman, a man named Dale, who had worked for my father for 11 years, was there. 2 subcontractors were there for a 9:15 site meeting. They were standing at the counter with hard hats and rolled blueprints when the badges came through the door. Dale looked at the badges. He looked at the agents. He looked at the rolled blueprints. One of the subs, a man my father had worked with for 6 years, picked up his hard hat off the counter and walked out without saying a word. He did not take his blueprints. The other sub followed him. Dale stayed. He did not offer coffee. He did not call my father. He stood behind the counter and answered every question JOAN HADLEY asked for the next 47 minutes. Tuesday afternoon, the Ohio Construction Industry Licensing Board sent a certified letter to Sinclair Built, informing Boyd Sinclair that his contractor license was under emergency review, pending the outcome of a workers' compensation fraud inquiry. The letter said all active job sites must cease operations until further notice. My father had 2 active pours in progress: wet concrete, rebar exposed, framing half complete. The sites were shut down Wednesday morning. The general contractor on one of the sites called my father's cell at 7 a.m. My father answered. The general contractor said 3 words: "We are done." Then he hung up. The other site's owner drove to Industrial Parkway on Thursday and stood in the parking lot for 20 minutes waiting for someone to come out. Nobody did. The office was locked. The lights were off. The third thing was the bonding company. Sinclair Built carried a surety bond of $250,000, required by the state for any contractor working on projects over $100,000. The bonding company pulled coverage on Friday of the first week. Without the bond, Sinclair Built could not bid on any new project, could not complete any existing project, could not legally operate. My father received the cancellation notice by email. He read it in his truck in the driveway of the house on Maplewood Lane. He did not go inside for 40 minutes. When he went inside, he did not tell my mother. She found out 3 days later from a neighbor whose husband was a plumber and who had heard it from a sub who had heard it from Dale, who had resigned on Thursday and taken a job with a competitor by Friday. The fourth thing was Dustin's bank account. JOAN HADLEY's team had issued a freeze order on every account connected to Sinclair Built's payroll. Dustin's personal account, the one his ghost wages had been direct deposited into for 4 years, was frozen on Wednesday. Dustin's debit card was declined at a gas station on Route 4. He tried it 3 times. He called his bank. The bank told him to contact the IRS. Dustin called my father. My father did not answer. The fifth thing was the gambling debt. JOAN HADLEY's forensic team pulled Sinclair Built's accounts payable records and found $31,000 in payments to a company called Ace Equipment Rentals over 19 months. Ace Equipment Rentals did not have a website. It did not have a warehouse. It did not have a single piece of equipment. It had a P.O. box in Henderson, Nevada, and a bank account that matched a payment plan Dustin had set up with a casino credit department at the Bellagio. My father had been paying Dustin's gambling debt through company funds. $31,000 disguised as equipment rentals. JOAN HADLEY added it to the file. The sixth thing was the family group chat. 26 people, aunts, cousins, 2 of my mother's church friends. On the second Wednesday after the pool party, my mother's sister, my Aunt Gail, sent one message. Loretta, I spoke to Dale's wife at the grocery store. She told me what the IRS found. I cannot be in this chat anymore. I am not angry. I am ashamed for you. Gail left the chat. Gail's daughter left. 2 cousins left. One of the church friends left. By the end of the week, the chat had 9 people in it, and 7 of them had not spoken. The last message visible at the top, above Gail's exit, was a photo my mother had posted the Saturday of the pool party. It was a picture of the grill with a caption that said, "Family time." The pool was visible in the background of the photo. If you look carefully, you could see the shape of something dark at the bottom of the deep end. The 7th thing was Cass. On a Thursday evening, 2.5 weeks after the pool party, Cass packed 2 suitcases and the dog and left Dustin's apartment while Dustin was at my parents' house trying to use their internet to apply for jobs because his own internet had been shut off for non-payment. Cass left a note on the kitchen counter. The note said, "I watched the video again last night. You laughed. That is the part I cannot get past." She drove to her mother's house in Columbus. Dustin called her 9 times that night. She answered on the 9th call. She said, "Do not call me again." She hung up. He called a 10th time. She did not answer. The 8th thing happened on a Friday morning in the 3rd week. My father drove to the Whitmore Avenue job site, the larger of the 2 pours that had been shut down. He had not been to a job site in 11 days. He parked on the street. The completion contractor's crew was there. 4 men. They were stripping the forms my father's crew had set 3 weeks ago. They were using my father's lumber. They were standing on my father's concrete. They did not know who he was. He got out of his truck and walked to the edge of the lot. He stood there with his hands in his jacket pockets and watched them work. He watched them strip his forms and stack his lumber and walk on his concrete, and none of them looked at him because none of them had any reason to look at a 61-year-old man standing on the sidewalk in a jacket watching other men finish what he had started. He stood there for 23 minutes. Then he got in his truck. He did not start it for another 8 minutes. His forehead was on the steering wheel. He was not crying. He was doing the thing that comes after crying, which is the thing where a person's body has used up everything it had, and all that is left is the weight of the forehead against something solid and the sound of breathing that does not know what to breathe for. Sunday morning, 3 weeks and 1 day after the pool party, my apartment on Birch Court. Opal's cast iron skillet was on the burner. 2 eggs, toast in the toaster, kettle on the windowsill, and a patch of sun that comes through at exactly 7:40 a.m. every morning and lasts for about 20 minutes before it moves to the floor. Myrna Trask was sitting at my small kitchen table with a cup of coffee I had made in a French press because Myrna does not drink drip coffee and does not apologize for the preference. She had brought a folder with 4 new client referrals. She set the folder on the table between her coffee and my plate. "You did the right thing," she said. "I know. You did the hard thing. I know that too." She opened the folder. 4 names. 4 small businesses that needed quarterly filings and year-end prep. She had been sending me clients for 8 years. She had never sent 4 at once. "Myrna, why 4? She took a sip of her coffee. She set the cup down. She looked at me over the top of her glasses the way she has looked at me since I was 22 years old, and sitting across from her at the diner with a lemon pie and a freshly passed exam and no idea what I was going to do with it. "Because you are going to need the income, and because you earned it, and because your grandmother would have told me to stop being sentimental and just hand you the damn folder." The eggs were done. I slid them onto the plate. The skillet handle was warm. The crack from 1987 was under my thumb. Opal had fixed it with a bolt. I had never refixed it. I did not need to. Opal's fixes held. Across town on Maplewood Lane, my father was in his truck in the driveway with the engine off and the radio on a station that plays oldies he does not listen to. The office on Industrial Parkway was locked. A yellow notice from the licensing board was taped to the glass. His 2 active job sites had been turned over to a completion contractor who had underbid the remaining work by 30% because he knew my father could not negotiate. The surety bond was canceled. Dale was working for the competitor. The family group chat had 5 people left in it, and none of them had spoken since last Tuesday. My mother's sister had not called back. The scrambled eggs from that Sunday morning, the ones she had made expecting my apology, had been the last breakfast she had cooked in that kitchen. She had not cooked since. Not because she could not, because the kitchen was the room where JOAN HADLEY's name had appeared on a phone screen, and the eggs had burned on the stove, and nobody had turned off the burner, and the smell had stayed in the walls for 3 days. Dustin's apartment was quiet. Cass was in Columbus. The dog was in Columbus. The apartment had no internet. The bank account was frozen. The debit card did not work. The envelope with $3,800 was still in Dustin's back pocket because he had not found anyone to give it to. He had tried to give it to my father. My father had not taken it. He had tried to give it to my mother. My mother had put it on the counter next to the microwave, and neither of them had touched it since. The envelope was sitting in my parents' kitchen next to a microwave that displayed the time in green numbers, and the time was always right, and the money inside the envelope was always wrong, and nobody was going to fix that with a bolt. In my kitchen on Birch Court, the eggs were on the plate, and the toast was on the plate, and Myrna was opening the folder, and kettle was in the sun, and the skillet was cooling on the burner, and the new laptop, a refurbished ThinkPad I bought for $600, was open on the counter with the cloud backup fully restored, and every file my brother had tried to drown sitting right there in rows and columns that did not care about swimming pools or brothers or fathers or the word dramatic. If this story found you today, subscribe to Family Secret Tales and share it with the person in your life who was told their work was a hobby and proved it was the only thing in the room that could not be broken. My grandmother Opal kept her receipts in a shoebox and her cast iron skillet on the burner, and she died in a one-bedroom apartment, and my father called that a small life. It was not a small life. It was an honest one. And honest is the only thing that holds. The eggs were warm, the coffee was warm, the skillet was cooling, the cloud was intact. And on the table between Myrna's coffee and my plate, 4 new names in a folder, waiting.